Hope you guys liked that little snippet I threw in the beginning. That is Split Open and Melt from Drum Logos. I keep calling it Drum Logos in Fukuoka, Japan. That show is one of my favorites with some of the best, coolest, spaciest psychedelic jams out there. And we're going to be talking about that exact show today, specifically the Split Open and Melt jam. So stay tuned. That's just the little snippet. How's it going, everyone? Today's episode, I just want to thank Edward Abbey, who has wrote an amazing book, Desert Solitaire, that I'm reading right now in Europe. And it's an amazing book, and I was enthralled in it for 6 hours today. So if you're looking for a nice outdoorsy descriptive book, I'd highly recommend this one. And yeah, big thanks to that for some inspiration for today's episode, where I'm going to be talking about the Japan shows, the Phish Japan shows, specifically in Fukuoka, the Drum Logos show. So, stay tuned. That episode is coming right now. How's it going, everyone? And welcome back to the GefiltePhish Show. I'm your host, Casey. And today, we're going to be talking about a very special country and a very special list of shows from 1999 to 2000 where Phish played in this country. That country, of course, is Japan. And these shows are some of the coolest I've heard out of the band. I feel like for a society that is so strict on psychedelia, they put out some of the most psychedelic shows for that run. A little bit of history on Phish's residency in Japan in the year 99 and 2000. They did two tours there. One in 99 and one in 2000. So I actually got it wrong that Drum Logos was in 99. It is in 2000. The 99 shows were all at Naiba Ski Resort in Niigata. I believe it was a festival from the 29th of July until the 1st of August. And just seeing the photos of that show is one of the coolest, one of the coolest scenes to imagine. It's kind of like at the base of this grassy, what in the winter is a ski resort, and of course Phish playing at the base of that. I think that is a really cool scene, and would have been a really cool show to have attended. That festival would have been really cool to attend. My words keep getting twisted up doing this pretty last minute this episode. But the set list from July 30th, 1999, opened with Birds of a Feather, into Sample in a Jar, which then went into Beauty of My Dreams, Stash, and I See You. And then there was an actual segue jam from Funky Bitch, Ghost, and Axel in set 1. And you can actually, I believe there's some information on that jam. It was pretty straightforward rock version according to Phish.net of Funky Bitch. Let's see what else it says. Ghost, which had a very Twilight vibe from apparently a Twilight Stroll in the Field. Let's check that out. Let's break this down. I'm very curious about the notes on this. Shoot, I'm trying to pull it up, but it's not really giving me too much information. Yeah, that is basically the jam which closed out the first set of that night. Set 2 was Down with Disease, My Soul, Reba. Set 2 Reba, by the way, this was still a time where that was fairly common. And there's a really good set 2 Reba from Osaka, which I addressed on my YouTube channel. I kind of did a full jam breakdown. It's a very slow jam with a fast-paced Reba because it came after Poor Heart. So it was still a pretty fast tone coming into the composed section. However, they really decompressed it when going into the jam, which went into a really cool Hold Your Head Up jam. Hold Your Head Up into Bike, back into Hold Your Head Up, Runaway Jam into Cavern, with the Julius Encore. So that's just the set list from that first day on the 30th. 31st had my friend, Golgi Apparatus. Oh, there was a segue between the two. Back on the train, limb by limb, free segue Rage, no segue into Sparkle segue character 0. The character 0 was pretty well jammed out. You can actually find this show on LivePhish. You can find the 31st of July show with a really cool character 0 jam. Just close out the first set. Trey basically signals the band vocally in front of the audience to launch into the jam, which is it's pretty cool coordination without, that telepathic instrumentalized coordination they usually do to launch pad jams. 2001, into David Bowie, which is a pretty cool psychedelic jazzy sequence. Velvet Sea into Prince Caspian, and this Prince Caspian is probably my favorite of all time, and it's a lot of people's favorites. I see a lot of people praise this Caspian for being really rocky and just really emotional, really raw and euphoric, with a lot of that compressed, distorted tube screamer tone from Trey. Really good fluff head, really good squirming coil. Encore opens with a Brian and Robert jam. Well, a jam opens Brian and Robert, and then a pretty sweet simple to close out the 31st. I'm not going to talk too much about the ski resort festival. I'm not going to talk too much about the Fuji Rock Festival. I just wanted to read the set list to kind of give you an idea of what the band was working with musically, what was in rotation at the time. It was a pretty big day on that last Sunday of August 1st, where they opened with Cities, Segway Rift, Segway Wilson, Segway Momodance, Segway Divided Sky. That entire sequence was just very well molded together. Horn, Segway Melt, and this isn't the melt I will be specifically addressing today. My favorite split open and melt of all time was from the Drum Logos show. But this split open and melt, the jam kind of veered away and went a little more on a euphoric tone. Poor Heart, Bounce Around the Room, Run Like an Antelope. That's set 1, and that is pretty grand as it is. Set 2, Possum, Segway Tweezer, Segway Llama, Segway Mike's Groove. Mike's song Into Hydrogen, Into Weekapog. The Wedge, The Lizard's Yem, Sweet Adeline, Tweezer Reprise. I also forgot to say that on that Saturday show, the 31st of July, there was, during the jam that went into Brian and Robert, Phish had a vacuum solo, with also a Japanese horn player supporting him, which was quite cool to go into Brian and Robert with that. And yeah, like I said, I think encore on the 1st of August with Sweet Adeline and Tweezer Reprise. So they kind of started with that really cool set of shows, those 3 shows at the ski resort at the Fuji Rock Festival. And I think that those shows they're just pretty cool. I'm going to throw in a sample of the Caspian here in a second, just to kind of give you an idea of the tone that we were working with. So now we get into the 2000 June run. So in the year 2000, during pretty much the entire month of June, or I guess the first half, they did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm getting all my information from Fish.net, by the way. It's a lot more reliable than just looking on LivePhish and going to the year, because there's still a lot of these shows missing on there. They played in Shibuya, Tokyo on Air East. I don't know if it was just one set or a full show. I'm not quite sure. But they did play that Shibuya, Tokyo. And then the Zepp Tokyo, they played a full show at that on-air venue. And then Zepp, they did the Hibiya. Zepp was in Tokyo too. I thought Zepp was in Osaka. Oh, there is 2 Zepps. Then they did an outdoor amphitheater in Chiyoda-ku. Into Club Quattro in Nakaku. Now, what I really want to focus on, though, is the Drum Logos Fukuoka show. You can find this on streaming services. The show has released this LivePhish. And you can also find it on, of course, the LivePhish app. This is LivePhish 04. So if you guys are wondering, if you don't know it by its show name, if you listen to LivePhish 04, that is this show. Now, there's something extra psychedelic about this show. There is a rumor that Trey managed to get some psilocybin, or the band. I don't really want to call out Trey specifically if this rumor isn't true, and that the band was tripping during the show, which made it very psychedelic. They did a lot of ambient jams. They had, I believe, 3 ambient jams, maybe 2. And it was wild. These jams got crazy, let me tell you. So, the Carini. Let's start with the Carini. The Carini starts off quite heavy, and it remains pretty heavy. There's a lot of squealing notes on Trey's part. He's really going in for the bends during it. And I'm going to play a snippet of this Carini right here. This isn't the jam I totally want to focus on here. And on my main channel, I'm going to do a jam analysis of the Split Open and Melt. I know I've said that a lot of times, but it's truly a really cool example of what they can do with that track. But the Carini, it started off hot. It was hot. And it was very much like a no-bull jam, kind of like how they break into 4.0 46 days. It had a very similar vibe. And I just want to comment on the cover of Pollock's work for this LivePhish release. It's really cool. It's very culinary and very cultural. And it just really sums up what craziness went down at this show. I totally forgot that they went into a really, really good curtain. The intro to the curtain is especially kind of Japan-y. The thing that I really like about the show, I've traveled to Japan, and it has a really interesting culture and a really interesting, colorful vibe to it. And I really feel like the tone that Trey had on his guitar and that all the instruments were kind of conveying was a little bit different for this show and really matched the location and really matched the vibe. Now, I don't know, I wasn't there. I don't know the scene. I don't know if it was a traveling American fan base or if Japan has a loyal Phish fan base in the country, but they were definitely trying to kind of imitate this kind of imperial sound. And I saw that a lot in the Carini, and especially with the Curtain With intro. The intro to the Curtain With, I'll play it right here, and you can tell me what you think, but it's very spun, and it's very fast, and it's very technical, and it's done well. So here's the intro to the Curtain. It breaks into a really good jam. Doesn't have the width. It's just the Curtain, and it's a good deal. It's quite a good deal. This was the curtain that really got me into the song, that really had me understand this early Phish track. I listened to the Colorado 88 before, and it hadn't really clicked, but I listened to this, I'm like, ooh, this is new. This is really fishy. So I really enjoyed that curtain track. And the jam is really calm. The jam is really blissful, and it's just really well done, and a change from that Carini tone from earlier. Moving into Cities. The Cities jam is yet again one of the jams from this show that I've really come to love. I've really come to love the fact that they break into that cow funk, which is pretty unconventional, and yet it's pretty long. It's a pretty long cow funk jam. It's around 9 minutes, 9.5 minutes, And it's just a lot of funk and a lot of really delicate finger work by Trey on the fretboard. And I really admire his soft picking skills during this show. I feel like he was really delicate with it. Maybe that's because of the state of mind he was in. Like I said about that little conspiracy theory earlier, that they were all shroomed out for this. But he's very much in tune with the guitar and treating it like a living being. And you can really sense it when the Cities is kind of winding down. It's one of the chillest Cities jams I've heard from the band. They really decided to quiet it down, funk it out, and kind of meld the two together. This entire show has a very trippy vibe, and it's just a very cartoonishly Phish show, and I really see that with Gumbo. The Gumbo Jam, how can I break this down? The Gumbo Jam in its entirety is not that heavy Gumbo, classic solo, but it's really extended. It's extended to over 12 minutes. And it's extended to have this softer vibe. And he's kind of twiddling back on these notes and kind of just kind of galloping a little bit, which is a classic Trey move. And something I'll also note about this show is that the use of whammy was really prominent. I think the harmonic note was something that they were really going for. They were really going for harmonics and kind of octavating. Is that even a word? Octavating? Octavating these songs to kind of have a new tone. But they just really bring it down. And I feel like Page really supports that kind of techno down-tempo vibe. This is a very down-tempo show. If you couldn't tell from these snippets, they take it really down-tempo. It almost is kind of like you're listening to Thievery Corporation. Great band, by the way. I was listening to them for hours earlier while reading my book, and that is another band I would like to talk a little more about sometime in another episode. But back to the Gumbo Jam. Whammy on, teetering on notes very lightly, until it basically just fizzles out. There's a lot of a lack of peaking. I think peaking really became a heavily used jam format for Phish, euphoric peaking in the 2010s. I think the blissy Love and Light Phish that we all know and love is a 2010 thing. This was kind of still dark Phish era. You got the Amsterdam shows, you got the Island tour, you got the Japan tour, and among other classics, Coventry, you got Phish It. Early 2000s and late 90s was really a time where evil Phish was really prominent. And that is, for a lot of people, for a lot of fans, that's prime time Phish, because the band was, in a way, very experimental with down-tempo kind of this electronica vibe that was very unconventional from traditional Phish. So yeah, I'll play a little snippet of what this Gumbo sounds like winding down, but it's a pretty cool sound that he's teetering on with this whammy and kind of the supportive Page in the bass. So we got Gumbo into Llama, fast Llama, and it's pretty shreddy, pretty skippy, super fast, the way llamas should be. I don't know what a lot of fans actually think of slow llamas. They're not my favorite. I like the iconic classic fast llama, and they definitely did very well, kind of soloing on this. It's 5 minutes, 22 seconds or something like that. Like most llamas are. They don't jam llama out too much. I suppose that's why they do slow llama, so they can kind of play around with it more and jam that llama out. Anyways, the llama, I don't want to, I don't really have too much to say about the llama from this show. I think it's good. I mean, the whole show is just, I don't know if it's a soundboard. I don't know if it's the effects. It's hard to have really determined what the show was sounding like from a live perspective. But there is a alteration in tone, whether it be soundboard recording equipment or whether it be actual guitar tone or actual bass keyboard effects. It's pretty hard to determine that information just strictly based on what you hear from LivePhish. But either way, it works. And the llama drops into Phi, which is pretty unexpected to me. And this Phi was really good. It's one of my favorite Phis. And Phi, for those who know me, is a really special song to me. It was one of those childhood Phish songs that I could just, it's funny lyrics, tells a story, a simple story. There's not really deep meaning behind it. And it means a lot. I have a Phi tattoo on my right ankle. So the song means a lot, and I'm always scouting for a jammed out Phi. You know, we've gotten a couple jammed out Phis. You can get some, there's one on LiveBait, which I really like. It's like 20-minute Phi, like a crazy Phi jam, especially for like a 4-minute song. And then there was one in 2012 where they got really calm and kind of like really really nice. It was really sweet. That 2012 Phi. I think it was at Dick's, but this one is almost 7 minutes, and that's longer than most Phis at the time. There's no megaphone. Vocal pattern is pretty well harmonized with the entire band, and it's pretty well performed. In that wind down at the end is my favorite part of Phi. Just kind of like how it kind of puts you to bed and tucks you in, and I really like what they did with that at this Japan show because it was very sleepy. It was a very calm vibe. So the Phi gets 2 thumbs up from me. And I was actually really jealous of that set last night from Chicago. That set had so many rare tracks on it, so many dream tracks that I love seeing. You know, I haven't caught a Phi yet. I've been dreaming to see a Phi. It had a horn, which I've also been really dying to see and experience. That Reba was really good. Lizards, AC/DC Bag. It just had all of these rare tracks. Alaska, too. And I believe a Funky Bitch. It had a lot of really good songs last night. And that Phi at the encore was just a cherry on top. I was like, hey, damn, they played it 2 years in a row. It had been like, 1 or 2 years even before they played it at Dick's last year. I remember sitting in my car. It was literally a week after I got my Phi tattoo. I was driving to Dick's. I was probably an hour away. Or an hour away from where I was staying in Boulder. And I was with my 2 buddies. And I just hear and then they bust out a megaphone too. You just hear the megaphone Phi, and that's an experience I've been jonesing to see. Just them use that megaphone prop, drop into a junta like Phi, like the OG seeming with the megaphone. So I was pretty jealous, especially after just getting that emotional tattoo and missing it. I literally knew they were going to play Phi that run. There was rumors. I could feel it. I could sense it. I just hoped it was the Sunday show. No, it was Friday. But it's all good. I'll catch it again someday. It was pretty cool that they played it last night, though. I didn't even expect them to play it this year. Next up, Heavy Things. Really calm Heavy Things. I really enjoy listening to it, even though it's not one of my favorite songs. If I go to listen to Heavy Things, it's the recording from this show. It's got a really fishy vibe. You know, Heavy Things is one of those songs where I can't really picture it being associated with Phish. And hearing the Japan version was just really blissful, happy, full-blown Phish. And it's one of the Heavy Things I will listen to. It's not very long. It's about 5 minutes. And like Llama, I'm satisfied. I don't have too much to say about it. But next up is the Split Open and Melt. Oh, I mean, that's why we're here after all. So as you heard from the intro where I played a snippet of this Split Open and Melt, there is a lot going on. And usually Split Open Melt, there's a lot going on. You know, it's a volcanic eruption of sonic noise. And it's definitely Phish's heaviest song to me. And it's trippy, it's wacky. No one really knows what the lyrics are about. You know, could be about taking a deuce. Could be about ejaculation. Could be about melting down on drugs. Or it could be a mix of all three at once. That's kind of what's fun about Split Open and Melt. And it's one of those iconic Lawn Boy songs that you didn't really expect to evolve into such a chaotic and iconic moment from Phish. It's really a unique song. It's not blissful ever, really. I've listened to a lot of Split Open and Melts. Not all. I'm sure they've taken Split Open and Melt in an experimental direction and kind of redirected it. But not often do they do that. And I feel like during this show, specifically, Trey wasn't really going for a full chaos meltdown. He was going to actually communicate with the audience what is going on. He was actually trying to simulate this volcanic eruption, like I said, of sonic disaster. And he does so with really clean notation. I feel like this Split Open and Melt really kind of like simulates a descent into madness. It starts really calm. It's kind of like a crossroads where he starts off playing some really clear, clarified notes and really jamming professionally. It sounds very noble. It sounds very regal. And it starts off kind of not very chaotic. It starts off pretty identifiable, because most times when Split Open Melt's being played, you're like, what the hell is going on? But not in this case. He starts off this jam in a very directive way. Like, there is a direction with what he's trying to play. It is not just meltdown chaos. We also have a grand piano from Page. The grand piano tone is really, I think, crucial to the direction of this jam. And I think you can notice that right there in that little bit of a descent. It's not really an ascent into a peak. This jam does peak, but not in the way you'd expect. It's kind of like a slow, twisting, moving whirlpool. And I think the grand piano really complements Trey. And I think that also this is a time during this show where Fishman's support is really noticeable. It's groovy and almost robotic in a way that's kind of like a metronome that works with this time signature really well. And I think it's going to be quite tough to really describe what's going on without actively listening to this jam. So when I make a live kind of like action jam breakdown to this jam soon in video format, I think maybe you guys can get a better idea of what I mean. But obviously, I can't, for Spotify purposes, play the entire jam out here. That'd just be copying. And but I will try to the best of my ability to break this show down the best I can, and especially this jam. I just really want to talk about some of the things I admire and I notice. So there's a moment around the 6-minute mark where the jam breaks from a 9/8 time signature into 4/4. And it's almost unnoticeable when listening to it. But there is this one little moment where the drums kind of change and the rhythm actually completely switches in a really clean way. I'll play that right now. By the way, I've been corrected in the fact that on the 25th of June there was a blissful jam with Split Open and Melt. So there is one that exists that I know exists, and it's not all chaos all the time, but most of the time it is. I just wanted to throw in that little correction right there. And also the 4/4 time signature is usually intermixed with a 9/8 time signature. It's usually 3 bars of 4 and then followed by a bar of 9/8. That from my research and from my listening, I've just determined that. So it's not really a black and white switch from 9/8 to 4/4 in the jam, but there is a signature switch, like I just played for you. The jam, I believe, is in a D flat minor 9. It could be D flat minor. It also could be a B flat diminished, where they take this jam in a direction of that. But the point of Split Open and Melt is to not really fit into a key, just to feature a dominant chord from that first jam. That first jam has an E flat, a D flat minor 9. So you get into kind of this clean kind of rhythm, and it's still kind of a clean descent on Trey's part. The band is kind of all rotating in one at this point. But they do kind of lash out for tension and release again later on, and they do kind of corral up the energy and just release it. They corral up this uptight energy and just go all chaos before hitting that kind of like maximum peak rhythmic effect of Split Open and Melt, which I actually don't see very often. Return into key time to signature unidentifiable chaos starts around the 8:45 mark, in my opinion. At this point, they kind of are just spinning around to release something. And the release is my favorite point of the jam. They continue this, and then around the 10-minute mark, Trey hits this riff, and he sticks to this riff for a little bit, around a minute. He'll hop back and forth with this riff while the band kind of is left to build tension. The band is left to evolve while Trey is just like, I'm sitting here and I'm doing my thing. So he's kind of soloing with this riff, and the band at this point is really separated and it's really chaotic. All the instruments are kind of doing their own thing and kind of just mashing. It's just a lot of mashing, a lot of sonic boom, a lot of sonic dismemberment that's going on with the band right now. So after about a minute of doing that, and kind of just band separated dissociation of instruments, it's kind of just like oil and water. It's repelling. These instruments are kind of building tension through space. Now, that's a really interesting effect that I think isn't utilized enough in jams, is that when the instruments are all doing different things and they're all kind of not associated with each other, there's a lot of tension they stick to it. They don't try and correct it. That's what's cool about Split Open and Melt, is the fact that the jam is structured in a way that the instruments can dissociate from each other in a chemical way almost. Just kind of like dissolve. The boundaries can dissolve and the instruments can act on their own, doing completely different things. Like, sure, they do kind of have to sound like they're in the same key. You can't just have someone playing E and someone playing A. But they are very much dissociated and doing their own thing. Like, some person's in D flat minor 9. Some person's in that B flat diminished. So, someone's in that E flat. It kind of can just kind of dissociate and yet correlate at the same time. So now that effect. So what effect does that have? The effect that it has on the music is that a lot of tension is built in space. It's almost like electricity. By pulling away from each other, they're reattracting each other to kind of snap like a rubber band. By pulling away, it's creating all this static. And the static is meant to kind of guide Trey to a peak. And so that starts around the 10-minute mark. They fully pull away during that 10 to 11 minute, and then Trey finds the note. He finds the note on the guitar, which will guide him to a peak. That happens around 11:06. At 11:06, I will play it right now, and this is also the jam I played at the beginning of the podcast. He peaks, and this peak is royal. This is a royal peak for a Split Open and Melt. You know, it's blissful in a sense, yet it's also chaotic. It's really like twin energies is the best thing I'll say. It's like it's two opposing things coming together to make one thing happen. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Like, the peak is surrounded by chaos because there is all this tension that the band has built up, and they're still separated when he peaks. The tension is still high. That static energy between the instruments and between these sound waves is still clashing, Yet Trey finds a way to rise above and kind of bring it to bliss. So there is kind of that bliss within the chaos vibe with this jam. Here, I'll play it right now. And that set literally just ends with that bang. It ends with that split open and melt. It ends with that rage. It ends with that tension. It ends with that release. And that's what makes this split open and melt so special to me. Now, we can analyze the theory all we want, but really sonically, it just does a great job at capturing emotion, and it does a great job at capturing energy. It literally sucks all the energy up in with that tension from that sound and releases it in a new way. I admire it a lot. Set 2, we start off with Back on the Train. Now, set 2 is almost as entertaining as set 1, if not more entertaining and more jammy. There's a lot of jams on this second set too that I would love to talk about, especially the Fukuoka Jam number 1 and Fukuoka Jam number 2, which comes with after Twist, after Walk Away, and before 2001. And this 2001 is also one of my favorite 2001s of all time, because of that heavy use of that whammy. Anyways, the Back on the Train, it's quite good. It's almost 13 minutes, and I've talked about an almost 19-minute Back on the Tram jam, which was the record breaker recently on my YouTube channel, GefiltePhish, and how that is one of my favorite jams of 2025. Now, a lot more jams have come since then that have also stacked up to be some of my favorite. But that Back on the Train jam, they went so many different places. This Back on the Train jam isn't really a highlight of the show for me. It was a great way to open up Step 2, however. And yeah, I mean, it's 13 minutes. I don't have too much to say about it, but it's a good Back on the Train, man. I'm not going to judge it. Now into Twist. The Twist is no Island Tour twist. It's 18 minutes long. It's a big twist. That Island Tour twist, it's a trance twist. And when they just gallop for minutes straight on the same patterning and experiment with effects on that same loop is just one of my favorite things I've ever done with that jam. It's super spacey, super trance inducing. They do something called trancing, that I call it, which is where they basically take a riff and they splice effects over it to make it sound really spacey. And that's what that Island Tour twist did. But this twist was an amazing vehicle into the first big jam of the evening, which is Fukuoka Jam 1. Bass is really prominent in this jam, and I think that it's really a mic solo with Trey Band-Aids and Page Band-Aids over it, and a really chill drum patterning from Fishman as well. So this jam it's pretty monstrous. It's 16 minutes and 19 seconds, and it's fully experimental and ambient. Now, I think that if the theory is true that the band was shroomed out, then this would really make sense, because this type of ambient jamming isn't really common with the band. Just like full out of nowhere experimentation with no launch pad, it's brave and it's a journey. And that's what we get with this first jam. Now, I'll play a snippet at the beginning of the podcast as well, but I'm going to play the same one again. It's just spacey. It's spacey, and it's got this same bass line, all 16 minutes pretty much, that they're building off of. Now, my favorite moments is that moment that I had the snippet of, which is around the 4-minute mark, around the 8-minute and 30-second mark, and I also like around the 13-minute mark, 12:47 to 13 minutes. Now, these are all the same bass line maneuvers, however, it is different experimentation over it. And I think the band is just really going on just a spacey ride. You can obviously tell that the headspace in the audience has really changed. I think that this show manipulated a lot of crowd energy and manipulated a lot of ambience. Obviously, like I said, with that split open melt, with the tension building, and basically that's those sonic waves sucking up a lot of static. It's kind of similar with kind of releasing electrical energy with some of these jams. I think that these experimental jams out of the two they release something. They release some sort of message through the music, and they release some sort of warm energy and electrical vibe. That jam pretty much immediately transitions into a cover of Walk Away by Joe Walsh, of the Eagles, famously. And it's a great cover. And it's kind of a break from that ambience and back to kind of a rock out concert vibe. It's 4 minutes, I believe it's 4 minutes and 44 seconds of just fun. And it's a great cover that the band did. The thing about the show is that the jams are really tight. I feel like the vocalism and kind of just overall artist communication vocally isn't as dialed as the jamming, but as I said on that fee, I thought it was quite good. I don't love the vocals on Walk Away, but as such, Phish isn't known for their vocals. But it is a really fun cover, and it's a good thing to throw between an ambient jam, because right after this, we go straight back into the belly of the beast. Now, in the final moments of the ambient jam, it's 7 minutes. It's actually 6 minutes and 45 seconds about. And they subtract everything besides guitar and keyboards. Mike stops. Mike is basically just creating static with the strings and the tone. Basically just holding him, basically providing warmth and giving kind of a zzz, like a buzzing. And Fishman is playing very lightly on the lower tom, while Trey and Paige kind of move through like a very calm oceanic jam. It's a very oceanic ambient jam. I won't say too much about the second jam, but I will play another snippet of what that sounds like, because I think it sounds really cool when they subtract out the instruments and they kind of just they shrink down the music. And it's something really similar to what I felt like the Split Open and Melted when they dissociated the instruments. They slowly but surely shrink it down into basically nothingness, and then kind of just whip up the sonic energy and just contain it. But that zips us into the Fukuoka 2001, my favorite 2001 of all time. And I actually have a pretty funny story about this song. I don't know if I want to expose myself fully, but me and my friends, we love this jam. I introduced them to this jam. This was kind of a late night, kind of like chill out, funky jam. This jam is funky. Mike's bass has this very bubbly tone the entire time during this 2001, and it's really well supported by Trey, basically just activating this whammy for the entire time. Paige doing some weird alien stuff on the keyboards, and Fishman just basically just going like basically this like weird fluttering. It's a pretty cool effect. It's a pretty cool 2001 jam. Anyways, we were listening to this jam one late night, and this was back. I had pretty bad gynecomastia at one point. That's a medical condition which gives you male breasts. And my friend was like, "You want to bet that you can suck your own nipple?" And so took my shirt off, got outside the car. Dumb moment. This was a dumb moment.
and basically attempted while this song was playing, blasting in the background. So me and now said friend, who is a big Phish fan also and comes to a lot of shows with me, call it the titty sucking song. So that's where 2001 gets its name, and it's a pretty funny story that I associate with this jam. But anyways, let's get into what makes this jam so cool. Like I said, whammy, bubbly bass, fluttering drums, and alien keyboards. Not much else to say, but they really stick to those valleys in between the peaks of 2001, like the dun 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 dun. They kind of really try and extend those valleys of rest and experimentation. It reminds me a lot of that first ambient jam, actually. What they're doing is kind of like Trey's being very delicate with these guitar notes and really extending those valleys in between those peaks to try and like cross them the best he knows how and kind of lead the band. I feel like the guitar does lead really well in a sense on this jam. I'll play a little snippet of my favorite part of this jam. It's at the very beginning. There are actually two parts I quite like, but I think when the guitar comes in at the very beginning and starts leading the way with that really chill, I think, partially activated whammy, like presses down the pedal a little bit. It's really well done. And that 2001 ends the second set. And like Split Open and Melt, it builds up a lot of this energy. I feel like that first set had a lot of down tempo elements and then ended with a lot of that static dissociative chaos from the Split Open and Melt. And this set had a lot of ambience and spaciness, and they ended that with kind of just like the most alien thing they could do, which is just get an experimental on a 2001 and extending those valleys. I don't know. It's a really cool thing, and I really like what they did with this 2001. The set closers are definitely the highlights for me of this entire show. The encore is Sleep into Squirming Coil, and I actually really enjoy the sleep. It's really quiet and well done. Something I notice about this show is that it's quite quiet, and you might be wondering what I mean. It's quiet in the sense that the band isn't afraid to change the vibe and silence things when needed. And I think that in the encore, in Sleep, and at the end of Squirming Coil, they don't really end it with a bang, but with a whimper, in a way. It kind of like and in a lot of these jams, they really teeter off, and they really just back off, until it's basically just sucks up what they had before. And they're left with a clean slate to kind of do whatever they want. And I think that works really well for them, and I think that this show is an exception because they're not afraid to do that. And they're not afraid to kind of like explore that a little bit. They're able to explore the imperfections. They're able to explore manipulating energy and sound waves and manipulating crowd vibes and manipulating ambience. And that is something they do a lot with here and less with manipulating music and manipulating the jams. Now, of course, I forgot the Live and Let Die and Funky Bitch Soundcheck, which are always a party and really fun to listen to. And a lot of the band commentary is pretty funny. So the entire LivePhish 4 box set, CD, or record, or whatever you want to call this release, from the Fukuoka show is just really a really memorable show and is one of my favorites to listen to this day. Thank you guys for listening to today's episode, and it brought me a lot of joy to talk about the show and revisit it and re-listen to it and point out my favorite parts and show them to you guys. I will be trying to make at least 2 episodes of the show a week, if not more, if I have more free time, but we'll see where it goes. But thank you guys so much for listening to today's episode, and hope to see you on the next one. I'm still thinking of some good ideas, but whenever there's fish involved, there's good things coming. So thank you guys so much. My name is Casey, the GefiltePhish Show, signing off. Peace out.